to finally meet you. I'm just so overwhelmed right now.
Oh, come on, brother, man, come on.
Yeah,
Well, look,
no,
I thank you for being persistent to make sure that I join your show. I know that you were one of the first to come out and speak and on behalf of our film Till, encouraging people to give it a chance and go out and see it. So I want to thank you for that, brother, because it's a story that needs to be told, and people should know the story, of course.
absolutely. Thank you, man. And because I feel like it could have been one of our kids. So, and it's still one of our kids that
That's
this
right.
is happening to. And I just think that we just need to spread awareness for future generations to come because it's just really important to do that. And I just disagree with people who talk about, oh, they just making money off our trauma or just our disdain. But it's a lot of great things that happen with our trauma as well. So we need to embrace that.
That's right. I mean, I'm a firm believer if we forget our past, history will repeat itself. And unfortunately, that's what's happening today, and which is why it's so important to tell Till's story, because there's no other story that speaks more to this generation, political and racial climate than the story of Emmett Lewis Till. I just was fortunate to learn about it at the age of 10, growing up in Baton Rouge, and Emmett has been my kindred spirit this whole journey. And so it's important that we do not forget his story, especially when you talk about his story, his lynching in the historical context of civil rights in this country. He was the catalyst that sparked the American Civil Rights Movement, which is so important that people need to know.
Oh, absolutely. And you had the opportunity of doing his mother last interview. So how about you tell us about how did y'all meet and how did that come about?
Well, I met Mother Mobley, I call her, Mrs. Mamie Till Mobley,
Hmm.
early 1995. It was actually over the telephone. It was after I made a decision that I wanted to pursue the story as being one of my first projects in film. And so it actually started off as research, um, my research on the Till case. I'm sorry, it started off as research material to develop the feature film in which you're seeing today. But I failed in getting it done back in those early days, and produced the documentary instead with the encouragement of the late Mrs. Mamie Till Mobley. But I met Mother Mobley in early '95. It was, again, right after I made the decision that I wanted to pursue the story as a possible feature film. And I had a side job. A lot of people, think filmmaking is easy, but I had a side job. I was just coming into the industry thanks to my best friend and his sister. And I was at Estee Lauder headquarters, and I was sitting there, and I said, if I wanted to pursue this story, I have to get his mother's blessings, because even at that time, Brother William, we were talking about appropriation and who's telling our story. So I didn't want to be someone coming out telling a story that I didn't have the authorization to tell. I wanted to make sure that I included the people who lived it in my project. So I initially reached out to Mother Mobley. I picked up the phone and called her. Actually, when she picked up the phone on the other end, I hung up in her face. And that was because I was so afraid. I was young at the
Yeah.
time, didn't know what type of mindset she would be in, didn't know what type of life she actually lived, because I knew she was the mother of Emmett Till, but unlike now, we didn't have the capabilities of the internet like we do now, where you get information instantly. It was only a little bit about her on the internet. And so when I called her, she picked up, I hung up. I couldn't believe I hung up in her face. I sat there and I fussed at myself for doing that. And I picked up the phone again, called her back. She picked up, and I immediately apologized to her. And I explained to her why I was so nervous to speak to her, because I've always considered Mother Mobley as being the mother of the civil rights movement. And here I am speaking to this iconic person, little old me, you know, someone who's just starting in the industry, don't even know anything about her much besides her being the mother, right? And
Hmm.
so I told her why I hung up on her in the first place, and I told her how nervous I was, and I began to tell her how Emmett Till was a part of my life for a long time, and how I wanted to see if there was a possibility I can assist her in any way in fighting for justice for him. And so that conversation, that first time, ended up being 2 hours on the phone with her. And I guess in a way that was her way to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. If I was someone just coming at her, just thinking this is something that I wanted to do, but she saw that I was very passionate to tell her son's story. And then we eventually met in 1996, actually 2 weeks before Christmas. We met. I went to Chicago, went to her home, and she would describe our meeting as being a love affair because we had grown to know each other so much over the telephone, and now we're finally seeing each other face to face. So she clearly filled that void of me losing my grandmother at that time, and I've heard her say to many people that I kind of feel that void in her losing her son Emmett. Not comparing myself, of course, to her
Of course.
child, but she felt
Hmm.
that in a way that I was helpful in that. And so we became very close, and she was my mentor and friend. Well, my friend first and mentor later for 8.5 years until she unfortunately passed away.
Yeah, that's good, man, because I believe you pretty much gave like a great account with the documentary because I had a chance of watching it and stuff earlier and stuff. But yeah, I could just see myself as she recreate the story and recreate the situation, and it just I just think that our people just really need to keep him in remembrance because he well, I would say that his death it's a horrible thing, of course, but we would not be able to do these opportunities that we're doing today if it
Yes,
wasn't for Emmett.
that's very true, and I'm glad you say that. And I keep have to hit, you know, over and over again. Emmett was the catalyst of the American Civil Rights Movement. Many
Mm-hmm.
times you hear people refer to him as the sacrificial lamb, because if it wasn't for the death of Emmett Lewis Till, you would not even see a Keith Beauchamp for one. But you would
Mm-hmm.
never have heard the likes of Dr. Martin Luther King or Rosa Parks. They would have never rose in their position of power. It's
Mm-hmm.
because of Emmett Till's murder that led a 26-year-old Martin Luther King to take on the Montgomery bus boycott. It's not just because of what Rosa Parks did. It's because of the fact that he felt that the Emmett Till murder was an intimidation factor to keep black people away from the polls. 1955 was an election year. Sister Rosa Parks, who I had the pleasure of meeting through Mother Mobley because they were good friends, and she said to me that Emmett Till was foremost in her mind that day she made that courageous decision not to get up from her seat on that bus in Montgomery, Alabama. But what's the missing link and what they don't tell you in schools, especially with this particular story, if you ever hear it, they don't tell you what exactly is the connection to Emmett and the Civil Rights Movement. Well,
Mm-hmm.
4 days before Rosa Parks made her courageous decision, she was in Dexter Baptist Church, or at Dexter Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, at a Till rally, which guest speaker was Dr. T.R.M. Howard, who had just come off of the trial of 1955, and he was angry about the injustice that befell Emmett. And of course, the person, not the person, but the minister at the time who was officiating at the church is a young Martin Luther King. Sitting in the audience in the congregation is Rosa Parks. And so 4 days after she attended the Till rally, she had this courageous, or made this courageous decision to not get up from her seat on that bus in Montgomery, Alabama. That is the missing link that they don't tell you about when you're in high school learning about Till, or in elementary school. Whenever anybody talks about Till, you rarely hear this story. And that is the connection that we must understand when we talk about Emmett, because we need to put his story in its proper context in civil rights and human rights history.
I agree. I agree, man. And also, bro, I just wanted to tell you, when I first had stumbled across you, it was 10 years ago. I was staying in Detroit. I had just moved from my hometown and I moved to Detroit with my sister. And when I first saw your show on TV, The Injustice Files,
Yes.
it was just really intriguing because it was nothing like that on TV, where someone just was investigating civil rights murders and stuff like that. So I would watch you every week. And
Thank you, brother.
and I was just like really like, wow, like this is dope, like, because it's nothing like that on TV, man. And so how about you tell us about how did that come about, and were you scared traveling to all these places while filming?
Well, the Injustice Files was a creation. Actually, the Injustice Files is my third television series that I was given. It's an extension, I would call it, of my work with Emmett Till, because when I produced the documentary that led to the reopening of the Till case in 2004, I was brought into a relationship with the federal government. Let me go back a little bit, because I think it's important to say that this is what was one of Mother Mobley's, one of the promises I gave Mother Mobley before she passed away, because we used to talk about how she felt when Emmett's story was covered in the media. She always felt guilty that it took away from a lot of the families at that time who were suffering from something similar. And so she always wanted to provide a platform for those loved ones for those families who lost their loved ones throughout the civil rights struggle. And so that was how should I say? That was one of the promises that I made her, or that I gave her, is that as soon as I got myself in a position, and if I was able to do it, I was going to help expose a lot of those cases, those injustices as well, and also provide a platform for the families, because that's something that she had hoped to do when she was with us. And so the whole Injustice Files idea came out of my relationship with the federal government, because I actually encouraged them during the Till investigation to be open to look at other civil rights murder cases that warrants new investigations and possible prosecutions. And because of my involvement in working with the federal government, they actually started an initiative called the Civil Rights Cold Case Initiative, which later becomes the Emmett Till Unsolved Civil Rights Crimes Act. And so I was working with these cold cases, or should I say the relationship that I had with the feds, because I want to be clear here, because I don't want people to be thinking that I'm in the bed with the feds like that. You got to keep it out open. But it was an opportunity for me to help with other investigations on civil rights cold cases, and they allowed me to do that. So when they had issues or problems solving certain cases or getting information on civil rights murders, I would be brought in to investigate those particular cases and see what I could find. And as soon as I find witnesses, I convince the witnesses to come forward to speak to the federal authorities to see if we could push the case forward. And so in return of doing that, they allowed me to produce television series and documentaries on some of the work that I investigate. And so the Justice Files came out of that. And I have to tip my hat off to the late, great Ed Bradley from 60 Minutes, because he's the one who planted the seeds for me to go to CBS with the project. And this was after his passing that I actually went and met with the president of CBS News, and they actually gave me the project on the spot. So I was truly blessed, I have to say, to create the Justice Files. And we went to ID Investigation Discovery with it because of Henry Slife, who's a close friend of mine, who's a close friend of mine. And he used to work at, I'm trying to explain how it happened. He used to work at Court TV. And my first Emmy nomination came from Court TV for the untold story of Emmett Lewis Till, the documentary. And so it was like, you know, I was back at home with people I could trust, and they allowed me to produce the series. And so the series ran, of course, from 2011 all the way to 2014 until I decided that I wanted to focus on the feature, which is why we went hiatus with the show.
Yeah, I hope it comes back, man, because like I said, I learned so much from you and the show because it was really informative, and I believe that the saddest episode was about Wallace Jackson. That was the saddest episode to me.
Yes, Brother Wallace. Yeah. I'm still close with all the families that stories I've told over the years, and it's unfortunate that they're still fighting for justice for their loved ones, and there's no restitution and nothing. And so my heart just goes out to them, and they're my extended family, and I just try to keep them lifted in prayer and you know, keep it positive, and hopefully they don't lose faith that something could get out of such tragedy, something good can happen out of such tragedy, and it has. You know, that case had a profound impact on voters' rights in this country. So, you know, these stories you should never forget, and you know, and I'm just blessed to be able to tell these stories and have family members who trust me enough to tell them as well. So,
yeah, and here's an interesting fact about me. I found out that I was named after my grand uncle, which is my grandfather's brother. He was also lynched in Mississippi when he was 19 years old. So when my mom named me, she didn't know anything about him because nobody in my family ever talked about him. So we found out when we was doing our family history, when we looked up our family records, and it was just like shocking because my middle name is a D and his middle name was a H. And I was just like blown away because I was like, I ain't never thought it would happen to anyone in my family. So this is why it's very important that we watch our words, because a lot of us don't know that we may have family members that suffered that same fate. And it's just really important to keep these people in remembrance, because if anything happened to us, we will want people to bring up our case, bring up our murder, bring up our travesties. So that's why I be really careful with my words and just try to encourage people to know the history.
That's right. That's extremely important, because we don't know the families, the family that we have. I mean, we know a little bit of history at times, but we don't know there's connections. And I don't think these things happen by coincidence. You know, you yourself have this platform to educate the masses. You know, why did you choose to do that? I think that may have a lot to do with your relative being, you know, murdered or lynched. And so, you know, we just have to be very conscious about where we are in this country when it comes to civil and human rights, and understand that what we're going through now is no different from what we have been going through for generations. But it's also important to understand how far we have come and how far we have yet to go in this country. And that's why I get so frustrated when people are easily, you know, they're so eager, and it's so easy for them to dismiss our history. We're the only people that do that. You know, no other culture does that. And
Right.
so if you don't know by now, if you're not educated to understand that if we forget our past history will repeat itself, then you're part of the problem, you
Absolutely.
know. And so these stories, regardless of how bad they may be, how tragic they may be, it's part of our makeup, you know. It's a way for us to understand where we come from. And so it's very important that we just, you know, stop with this idiot stuff about forgetting the past and thinking that it's so easy for you to move forward towards the future. Because if you don't know the past, you're not going to be able to move forward towards the future. And what we're dealing with now, all these social ills that we're dealing with now, are problematic because of the fact that many of us are not educated enough to recognize the problem before it happens. And so, you know, I don't want to seem like I'm on this soapbox or talking this old cliche stuff that our elders used to talk, but now I truly understand the importance of telling our history. And so I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing. I mean, I'm going to keep on encouraging people to come out and watch my work because it's very important.
Oh, no doubt, man. And same here, because I be in this history stuff just heavy. And I made a whole lot of people gravitate towards me because they know, see anybody like in their 30s being this passionate about it. And I find out new things and I tell it. And I just keep going, man, because I believe that those people who ain't no longer here, they proud because a lot of people was young when they met that fate.
That's right.
And I and now that I'm 34, about to be 35, like it's just a huge difference from how mature they was like in the 50s and 60s. And then you see how everything is now. It's
Yeah,
just
man.
like a real culture shock.
I tell everybody what's funny is look at Dr. King. He was 26 years old at the time of the Montgomery bus boycott. Now ask yourself, what were you doing at 26?
Oh man. Uh,
That's your wake-up call.
yeah. And I don't want to go out like that. And well, me and my best friend Tony, we always have this conversation about legacy, because I'm very I think big, and he pretty much it is what it is kind of guy. But I told him that the reason why I push these episodes, the reason why I on this grind is because I refuse to be forgotten. Because this work that I do, I make a contribution to the culture every
That's
day.
right.
And I try to just get people to understand that we have to support the real ones. And people like you, I feel a real superhero. It isn't scripted or anything like that. This is
Thank
real
you,
life.
man.
You know, I respect you because you really put your life on the line to educate us, you know, because there's no telling how many, I don't know if you ever had hate mail or threats come at you or anything like that, but, you know, when I watched the show, how you would be traveling and stuff like that, I could just tell, like, in the back of your mind, like, you know, I just hope that this goes well today. I hope nobody harass me or stuff like that. You know, it's just things like that, man. I commend you for that because
Brother.
you really taught a lot of young men like myself. Because I was 24 at that time. I was really going through just a transitional period in my life because I was just starting over. But it was just your show, man, that really kept me going, kept me motivated. And I put a lot of people on to your show and stuff. And I called my mom today and let her know that I was interviewing you and stuff. So I had to get her my username and password for my Discovery Plus so she would know who I'm talking about. She was like, oh my God.
But look, William,
Yeah,
I really appreciate it, man, because I don't do this for the accolades or anything, but I hope that my work will inspire others to do something similar or to uphold those legacies that our ancestors have left for us. And that's what's important, you know. You having this platform, you providing a platform for me now, to have a voice to reach other people. And that's what it's about, man. You know, we're here on this planet for a certain reason, all of us. We all can become freedom conductors in our own way. We all can cause change in our own way. You know, I was just fortunate to be able to find my calling early on, thanks to Mother Mobley and my parents, you know, and I just wish that others are able to get in tune with themselves a lot earlier and understand that they're here for a purpose. You know, it's nothing wrong with living a lifestyle of individuality where you're living your life, a private life, and you're not worried about anything but your family. But then there's those of us who are people of color, I would say, who don't have the luxury anymore to stand idle by and watch injustice happen before your eyes. We're born into activism. That's what I truly believe. People of color are born into activism. It's up to you to turn that switch on or not. And it's not, you know, this movement or this, you know, the activism with which I speak. It's not for everyone. It only, you know, only particular people have the passion and the perseverance, the dedication, the discipline to do this type of work. And when you choose this work, you know that this is a lifelong journey. This is not something that's overnight. It's not like the instant activists, I call them, that's out there right now, thinking just because they have a platform, they can say a few words and that'll be it. No, you gotta really put in the work, you know, and it's reaching back, it's talking to those who are still with us, who understand life a lot more than we do, you know, who are educated about the past. And so, you know, I always reach back and I talk to those elders because they're the ones who are at my side the whole time, making sure that I'm doing the right thing. And that's important for you to have because what they did worked, you know. And if we, you know, in terms of, and we're talking about Till, so when we talk about Till, you know, if we could arguably say that the civil rights movement was the greatest movement ever produced by citizens of this country, the most successful than any movement of any day, then you must look at the story of Emmett Till and understand what transpired in 1955 and the courageous actions of his mother. Because only then you would know how a movement actually started. Racial progression in this country has only happened through the blood and the sweat and the death of the black body. Racial progression hasn't happened any other way besides through the death of the black body. And so when you understand that, and you juxtapose to what's happening today on the streets of America, when you see black and brown murdered on the streets of America, whether it's at the hands of white supremacists or even those who are sworn in to protect us, Emmett Till's name always metaphorically comes back to fruition. And that is a reason why, because the reason is Emmett's death continues to serve as a grave injustice, a reminder of a grave injustice, as well as hope and change. It was that movement of black resistance that came out of the murder of Emmett Lewis Till, or the lynching of Emmett Till, that led to the civil rights movement because it became integrated. And so people need to understand how a movement starts, because we haven't had one since that time. Everyone braced themselves when George Floyd was assassinated, when Trayvon Martin was assassinated. We all thought that Black Lives Matter was it. I thought it as well. But then it didn't catch up. It didn't get the traction that it needed. I'm not saying that it's over with, but it didn't have the traction that we all had longed for. And this is the reason why we have to understand how the movement started in the first place, and many of us do not know that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that this time it just really became a slogan campaign, because it was just it was more destruction than resolution, because it was just riots and stuff like that, and it was nobody to really give us a blueprint or like a floor plan or what to do next. It was just destruction and stuff all across it was a global thing.
Yeah.
So I just think that, everybody focus more on just the bad and not the solution, because always have to have a solution. You always gotta, you know, even meet with your oppressors and just say, like, look, this is what we want, this is what we require. If y'all don't want to oblige, then we can go do our thing, and there's nothing wrong with doing our thing. And I just love to talk to people about just what we need to do, because everybody think that they struggle is worse and stuff like that, and this gender war amongst our people, I just wish that it would stop, because I just think that we both, all of us is fighting white supremacy. All of us are going through it. There's no exceptions to the rules, and I just think that we just all just need to come together. And I wish that all of us would get it and all of us will wake up, but it's gonna take us like a lot to just get everybody on the same page. But I don't think that it's impossible. I just think
Well,
that it's
Brother
just gonna
Willie,
take a little bit longer.
the problem is this. What we're dealing with are generational ills,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it means that things are not going to be fixed overnight.
Yeah.
These generational ills, it may take a generation or two to fix. The problem that I have is that we have people who are living among us who was a part of that movement yesterday, who can actually tell us how we can navigate around what we're dealing with, and give us direction on a blueprint on what needs to happen next. What we're dealing with now is a generation of young people are people who think they know, they have the answer to it all. So they choose to work in their own way to get the information across, or to get a movement started, and it keeps derailing because we don't have the education or the support that is needed to have a movement in which we want to see. I always say this because it's very important that we understand that I don't want to give anybody false hopes about racism and how we can eliminate racism. Racism, you're not going to be able to eliminate. That's just not going to be something that we're going to be able to do in our generation. You know, what we need to be teaching today is tolerance, how people
Mm-hmm.
need to be tolerant of each other and how to respect each other's cultures. That is more attainable than to go out and fight and try to fight this this great social ill or social construct of racism, because that is not going to happen in your lifetime, because man's always going to have prejudice against someone.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is going to exist. But we can teach tolerance, which is very important to understand everyone's differences and embracing those differences. That's more attainable. Now, you mentioned something about the riots, and I don't want to go for tit for tat with that, but riots,
Right.
is the voice of the unheard.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just like we have the physical demonstration of marching in this country, rioting, I won't even call it rioting, but unrest, right?
Yep.
Unrest is a very effective tool. The problem is you cannot have marching, demonstrations, and unrest without having a next step. which is the solutions are bringing everyone to the table, which you talked about. That needs to happen next. That needs to be executed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want us to lose the foundation of which I call the movement, those elements of demonstrations and marching on the streets, because that's our constitutional right to do that.
Right.
When you lose that, then we really have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hear young people, and I hear people, not just young people, I hear people all the time, different demographics. Oh, we need to stop marching. No, you don't want to lose that, that ability to discriminate, to demonstrate in that manner, because that's going to become an issue. That's going to roll over to us losing constitutional rights that has gotten us here thus far. And so it's very important, man, that we become organized and become aware of our surroundings. That what we're seeing today is nothing new, and I have to keep saying this over and over again. Those same social ills that we're plagued with today, we're plagued with back yesterday, because these are generational ills. We have to understand where we're at in this country right now and what we must do to move ahead. And the only way we will be able to understand where we're at is learning that history and understanding that this, what we're fighting today may have cosmetically changed, but the fight for civil and human rights remains the same in this country.
Absolutely, man. And also wanted to ask you this, because it was some hanging deaths that happened.
Yes.
Like in the recent summer. And I know that you did a few episodes about that. The end of the rope and everything. I told you I watched it.
Yeah, you did.
So they always declare suicide amongst us. And I'll be telling people this. I'll be telling people that black men don't hang themselves off no trees.
Yes.
I'm not saying that we don't hang ourselves, but we ain't picking no tree.
Yeah, the stigma of a black man hanging from a tree is an embarrassment for a family, or for a mother. And so it's very hard to even conceive that something like that could take place, but it does happen. You're speaking about at the end of the rope. That at the end of the rope became a project that I worked on early on, right after my Emmett Till investigation, the first investigation. And that was because people were coming to me and talking to me about hanging deaths that happened in recent years that echoes traditional lynchings. But as you said, they were called suicides. So I was able to get some funding from the Rockefeller Foundation. They gave me $60,000 to actually record a lot of these cases. And when I got myself into a position to be able to tell those stories, I was able to do it, and that was with the Justice Files. I didn't think it would be, I thought it was going to be very difficult to get it on television, but they allowed me to do it. The show itself is funny, Brother William, because, you speak about it because you had a chance to see it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who had not seen the show, but it was a cutting edge show because there was no other show like that on television.
I know.
A lot of the series, the studios and the networks wanted you to have cases that are adjudicated, or you have an ending to it. Mm-hmm. The Justice Files started off with the name The Justice Diaries because of the fact that in our world, in our history, in our society, I'm talking about Black people's society, right? I mean, it's society as a whole, but in our reality, a lot of these cases are never solved. Mm-hmm. And so these cases are trickled down from generation to generation, or these cases are not adjudicated. takes years for that to happen. So I wanted to make sure that people understood when I created the show that we may not be able to solve all the crimes at one time, and that's the reality in which we live. So that allowed me to not only deal with unsolved civil rights murder cases, but branch myself off to different social ills or issues that we're facing with in our community, so I could tackle it on a platform. But people were saying, you know, it's interesting because at the time it was cutting edge work, and you know, even the networks, sitting at the networks and trying to pitch the story for the next episode, people would look at me and turn their nose because they're like, okay, we don't need to be talking about that now. How serious is this, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden, a decade later, everything that I covered in the Justice Files has risen back up and everybody is talking about it as if it's something new, you know? And so people started saying, oh, wait a minute, Keith was way before his time. He was way before his time on the show. But I'm happy I was able to produce a show like that that will have an impact and people will remember. So when I bring it back, you know, it's going to be on a whole nother level. So I can't wait to do that.
Man, I can't wait, man. I'm lit up right now.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, man. Because, like I said, that show really made me learn so much because they didn't teach us none of that in school. So it was just one of those things that I was glad the authenticity and the raw, real, and uncut of it all. Like, it ain't sugar-coated. It's straight to the point.
No, it's not written on paper. None of that. It was a real reality show, I would call it. And I was just blessed to have CBS as my production arm, and ID allowed me to do it. But I'm really hoping to come back with something a lot bigger and greater. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I have one more question for you.
Yes, sir.
So you was doing a doc on Johnny May Chappelle, right?
Yes, yeah.
See?
You're doing some homework.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So what was that like meeting the family and going to her old house and all that stuff? What was that like?
You know, Johnny May Chappelle case touched me a lot because I befriended her son, who was 4 months old at the time of his mother's death.
Mm-hmm.
And Shelton Chappelle and well, I can't just say Shelton, but Shelton and Lee Cody, the detective who investigated the case in 1964, they were at the helm of this, trying to bring the truth out to the masses. They were at the forefront, I should say. I was given the story through a friend, a journalist, who was following the case, and she reached out to me and asked would I assist the family, and that's how I got involved. But they already had the wheels turning on the story itself. I just provided them a bigger platform to tell it, and I was able to work closely with Shelton Chappelle to tell his mother's story. I could never imagine growing up knowing that my mother was murdered, lynched in 1964, and he was 4 months old. And the only picture that he has of his mother that was ever taken was the picture of her in the morgue. And that was also in Jet magazine, by the way. And so I could, you know, when I met the brother, I said to myself, there's no way that I cannot help this man. I have to provide a platform for him. That was a huge case for the civil rights movement in Jacksonville, Florida, and it's also a case that should never be forgotten. And so I've been truly blessed to work on these stories, man, and having the family support me or trust me enough to tell these stories at the same time. I like to think, you know, many of these families that I meet, Brother William, they understand when they reach out to me, or families when they reach out to me, they have exhausted everything. These are the family members that I get. They don't know what else that could be done. And so with that in mind and understanding from their POV, getting justice, courtroom justice, could be something that's very long. It's going to take a long time to do, right? But I have solace in a way knowing that I'm able to provide a platform so there's recorded history of these victims, which is very important to have because, and not to mention, a lot of these families who come to me, they don't really know what happened to their loved ones. You know, they have their own narrative of what transpired, but they don't really know until I go in and dig up information and really find out how and why these victims were murdered and lynched. And so I have solace knowing that I'm providing that platform for them because many times, you know, many of these families would tell me that that has given them more closure than courtroom justice would ever give them closure. And so that's why I continue to do the work. And you know, and it's educating me as a human being about mankind, man and womankind, and how ugly, you know, humanity can be if we don't keep it in check. And so I learn about these stories. I don't just learn about the murders that occur. I learn about the terrain in which where it happened. I understand that history, and that's very important.
Man, and I agree because that's why I do what I do because it's just really important that we not only again keep those in remembrance, but also what can we do from here to prevent something like this from not happening again?
Yeah, well, you know, that's the $1 million question. You know, what we're seeing today, unfortunately, are the same social ills, as I said, that we saw yesterday. And we keep falling in this cycle. But I believe that the cycle is happening for a reason. It is happening because we must awaken the sleeping giant in us once again, that sleeping giant for change. We haven't had, think about this, we have not had a successful movement since the civil rights movement.
Right.
We're talking about the 60s, you know? And out of respect for my elders who are part of the movement, who are still with us, I should say the ongoing movement for civil rights and human rights in this country. The movement has never ended. And each generation, it's your obligation to uphold those civil rights or those free liberties that was once won, because we're losing them one by one. Just look at what is happening in this country. But I truly believe that things happen for a reason. You know, I believe there's a time and season for all things. I think that's what the good book says. And this is the season for us. We are the most politically conscious generation of any day. We have so much technology at our fingertips. Many of us have a platform just by using the device that we're speaking on. You can shoot a movie with a cell phone. You can you can have your own show as we speak, you know, and like we're doing now. So what I'm saying is, technology is here to enhance what has already been successful. And I don't understand why people don't realize that. What has happened during the civil rights era, during the civil rights movement, it was successful. It's not broken. Granted, we won some free liberties. Granted, we didn't get all that we want. But it's up to this generation, the next generation, the generation after next to uphold those free liberties and to continue to fight for, you know, civil and human rights in this country. And so you have to understand that things are not going to happen instantly. And to be honest, I wouldn't trade my history and what we've been through with anybody. It is what we've become. It's what, you know, it's who I am. And if we live in a world of utopia, like everyone, speak of, then what would be the purpose for man to live? Because man always have to do something greater than himself, or to achieve something greater than himself. And without these daily struggles of civil and human rights, I don't believe I would be able to survive in a country of so-called utopia. That's not the world that I want to live in. I wake up every day thinking of Emmett Till, going to bed at night, thinking of Emmett Till. Dr. King said, if a man hasn't found something that's worth dying for, then he isn't fit to live. I live by that quote every single day of my life, because I know, although we may not have the justice or the country that we truly want to live in, it's that element of hope and that fight in me that keeps me going. And, that's what makes me wake up every day, knowing that I get up the next day, I have a next day to become a better person than I was when I went to sleep. And that is very important to do. And so, but everybody is not made to do it, Brother William. That's what I'm saying. It's only a selective few, just like the movement itself was only done by a selective few, and it was done by young people. And I have to reiterate that. Young people. I'm talking about high school, middle school, sometimes elementary school students who is out there on the front lines fighting for our rights. And so that's why it's so important that we uphold those legacies and make sure that that work that these people have done wasn't in vain.
Absolutely, man. And I just wanted to say I thank you for coming on my show, man. And we're going to have to do a part 2.
Yeah, let's do it, man. I would love to. And I know you've been chasing me for a minute, but I want to encourage everybody to please go out and see Till. It's a very powerful film that I hope will inspire us all to understand where we are in this country right now and where we must go. It's a 29-year effort for myself to get this film made. And it's taken 67 years for a film like this to be made, get made on the big screen. So I encourage everyone to go see the film. Please follow me on social media. I'll be back, Brother William, with the Justice Files. I'm just trying to revamp it in a way that's going to be exciting. And so I'm going to continue to work, and I hope you continue to work as well.
Oh, no doubt, man. And I'm going to go see it on Saturday.
Oh, you're going to see Till?
Yeah.
Please do, man. And I know you're in the Detroit area, right?
Yeah.
So I hope to get there at some point soon. I want to start screening for young people. I mean, we started this HBCU and college tour, but I want to touch on high schools and elementary schools as well. So I want to start that around the country. And so if anyone that's watching, if you want to help host a screening in your community, please reach out to me, and we'll try to make that happen.
Yeah, I got you, man. Anything you need over here, I got you. I'll
All right,
spread the word.
All right. Well,
But
hey,
yeah, man, I really appreciate
it's great
this.
to be on this show, and I really appreciate your time and your patience and everything. And let's get on the horn and talk again. Maybe I have more stuff exciting to talk about next time.
Nah, it was all good, man. And let's do it.
Yes, sir. And let me say this before I get off.
Okay.
We're still fighting for justice for Emmett Till. So everyone, yeah, the film is out there. I'm very excited about the film. But I do not want people to lose sight that we're still fighting for justice for Emmett Till. There's one person who's still living. That's Carolyn Bryant Donald. And she needs to be held accountable for her participation in the kidnapping and the lynching of Emmett Till. And I won't stop going after her until that is done. And so please join us on that fight. If you can remember this, please go to Emmett Till Legacy Foundation and sign the petition There's a website, the Emmett Till Legacy Foundation. Please sign that petition and please look out. There's going to be some interesting things that's coming up that we're going to, I want to drum up the public to help in getting justice for Emmett. So there's some things that we're planning, I should say, that I can't speak about at the moment. But I just want everybody to understand that, when you go see Till, just keep that in mind. It's not just a movie, it's a movement. It's a movement to reconcile the wrongs that has been done, not only with the Emmett Till case, but many other cases like Emmett Till.
Oh, no doubt. And I got you. I'm going to post that so everybody can find it and everything. So just whatever, man, whatever you need from me, man, I got you.
All right. Well, I'm going to call on you, brother. I'm definitely going to call on you. But let's talk soon, man. I appreciate you and stay blessed.
Likewise. Have a good night.
You too.
All right.